Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2020 Kia Soul. Now I like Kia Souls, always have, so I've been looking forward to this test drive. And so I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a quick drive and, well, I'm going to tell you what I really think. Before we get out on the test drive, we're going to talk about styling because there's, well, a lot to talk about, as I often say. It's all new for 2020. It's larger, 1.2 inches longer on the wheelbase, 2.2 inches longer on the entire length, although it does have the same width and the same height as before, but it is a little bit bigger and it looks a lot wider, even though it's not, because this new facial design with its long, sort of really short shapes that are really stretched out gives it that wider look. Now the face is really where we need to talk first, because this is a bit of a departure from the previous generation in that these headlights, or rather the eyes, are actually very slim, very slender, therefore sleek. But there's a bit of a catch there. It's not really a headlight. The headlights on this particular model are actually down below in that larger square. Those are actually the real headlights. The eyes, as it were, being up higher. Up in that top element, what you do have is a daytime running light and the turn signal. You do go to LED when you go up to the next trim grade and above. This being the X-Line, it's a mid-grade. So what it does have is something a little bit different than what we've seen in previous Kia Souls. Is along the lower front fascia, along the sides, you've got sort of an off-road look that ties into those 18-inch wheels that come standard on this trim grade. Also, on the top, you have roof rails that sort of tie to that SUV crossover kind of theme stylistically. One other little detail, the hood wraps down and has a nice clean line all the way around. At the rear, again, something completely different. What has come across is that familiar floating island look that we've seen on the previous Kia Soul. Here, it's just a little bit more avant-garde, dare I say it. The taillights are a lot more wrapped around and tied together, a lot more ornate, rather than that vertical look that came on the previous generation. Large rear glass, and down at the bottom of the rear fascia, you have more of the trim that goes along with this particular trim grade. One last design element that is something new for the Kia Soul is this floating roof design. There's a black piece of plastic that says Soul on it that actually separates the steel bodywork from the lower and the upper half. Now, this comes in handy when you have the two-tone roof option, which this and higher grades do offer. I like it. I have to admit, at first it didn't really have that funky vibe that Kia Souls have always been known for, but it's growing on me in the week that I've had it here. And actually, this one, maybe if it were white you'd see it more, but it has kind of a stormtrooper thing going just a little bit. Can you see it? No? The interior of the Kia Soul is very much what we've seen before in terms of its overall quality, look, and feel. Kia has always done a good job with things like the switchgear and the quality of the things you touch and the consistency of quality throughout the interior. This interior to me feels like it's larger than before. It feels wider, and like the exterior, that really is in part to the design. Across this dash and into the door panels, you've got this wraparound effect, and that really does give the sense of width in here. And if you look at the specs, it's exactly the same size. The instrument cluster and the overall design, not really daring. In fact, I'd almost say it's a little bit more mainstream than the last generation. What is nice is in the door panels, you've got these nice pieces of trim, and as you go up the trim grade scale and get into the more expensive cars, you see a lot more color, a lot more diversion from this sort of monotone look. What we've got here in the X-Line is I've got leather on the steering wheel, I've got leather on the shift knob. The instrument cluster is standard 2-dial layout with a small screen in the center for a lot of information, customizable. The steering wheel design, very important. One thing Kia's used to have is switches on the steering wheel that used to catch your thumb when you were turning the wheel and it would change your radio station. That's gone now. They've redesigned that and fixed that little bit of a problem. It's a handsome steering wheel with a nice lower piece that's got some color key to it. It's a pleasing interior to look at. These seats are also very comfortable. Even though we are in a mid-grade, haven't gone up into leather just yet, I like the overall feel and look of this cloth. It's very sturdy. I think it's something that's going to last a while. And these seats have good tight bolstering. Now they are manually adjustable, which is fine. You can get them where you want them. That's what's important. And the overall seating position here is what you expect in the Kia Soul. It's very commanding, as you can see just looking there, as well as the pictures I'm showing you. Good visibility in this car. Not much of a blind spot except for that one bit back there in the corner when you're looking back. But as you sit here, everything's at the right height. And this center console is just a very simple design too. Cup holders in the center, shifter, and a nice cubby down at the front you can throw your phone in. Lots of charging ports. I've got two 12-volt, one USB, a nice size compartment here for things like your phone and keys and whatever else you're going to throw in there if you're going out on a hike or something like that. As we move to the rear seat, lots of space back there. It's a nice high seating position, and with these front seats set for my height, about 5'8", 5'9", depending on what I'm wearing for boots, shoes. A lot of space back there for both leg room as well as headroom. That seat does fold down in a 60-40 split, and that gives you a nice big load area back there. I will point out that because of the extra size, the extra length of this new Kia Soul, there's more cargo space back there. That's where most of that room went. Another bonus is you notice how deep that cargo is. There's actually an available divider you can put in there that raises the floor so you have a smoother floor and cargo underneath, but as it comes in this model I've got right now, it's just a nice deep well. Best yet, under that deep well is a mini spare. That's something that actually was not standard on the last generation. That's an upgrade in my opinion. I almost bought a 2017 Kia Soul and I had to buy a spare as an option. Didn't like that idea too much. I like the fact that it's standard because the fix-a-flat thing is just never quite as versatile as that spare is. What has sort of come down in my opinion is what's available here. This is, for this trim grade, a pretty nice standard, big, large touchscreen. And with Kias, as I've come to expect, the controls are very good. It's well laid out. The menus using this thing is very intuitive. I like that. Hard controls on the sides, a volume and a tuning knob for the most used things, but you can use that screen when you want to for the menu items. Very simple. What I'm disappointed in is the fact that even at this price point, right around $22,000, we're missing satellite radio. I'm a satellite radio guy. I like that. And the most important thing is in the last generation in this trim grade zone, you could get a package that would allow you to upgrade that one thing. This one does not. They've moved the packages and what's standard, what isn't. Even here, this is a key that you twist. They've taken away a few things, they've added a few things in terms of equipment, but really I think where that argument gets some traction is when we get to the drive. All right, so out for the drive. First thing we have to talk about is what is now standard equipment for this engine. We have a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, a little bit different than before. Last generation had a 1.6-liter 4 as a standard engine, and then you would step up to the 2-liter, and then most recently a turbo engine was available on top of that. It's a little bit different than last year's 2-liter though. It's decontented, it's detuned, it has less power, 147 horsepower, 132 pound-feet of torque. That amounts to about 14 less horsepower than last year's 2-liter engine. It is available with a 6-speed manual transmission in the base LX, but if you go anywhere beyond that, like where we're at now, you only have also a new transmission, what Kia calls the IVT. What is that? Well, it's not an automatic transmission anymore, I'll tell you that. Used to be you could get a 6-speed automatic here, and that was one of the wonderful things I loved about Kias is they had resisted going to a continuously variable transmission. They've gone to one now. They call it an IVT so that maybe you don't think it's a CVT, but the reality is it's a CVT. And all of their marketing material tells us that it's really good because it doesn't have all the problems that CVTs have, but guess what? It has that same rubber band, never shifts, and gives you a traditional driving feel, overall experience that you get with a CVT. That's what you get. That's what's here. So that is my first impression of the drive, is that we've got a powertrain that's a little bit more boring, a little bit less powerful, and well, just more mainstream. Not something you expect to find in an exciting car. But in fairness, if you look at all the vehicles you can compare this to, we're in the same ballpark. Almost all of them now stick you with this CVT. It's just the way it is. What I will tell you is that there is a drive mode selector down here, and you can put that in sport, and that does give you some simulated shifting, but it's still not real. differential shifts. They're just sort of these slidey, slippery kind of, oh, I have a shifting sensation. But overall power is adequate for this car, I think, as you drive it around town. Now I'm flooring it right now, but the CVT isn't letting this thing do much. It's not a fast car. It's adequate. Now they do this for fuel economy. That's really the rub, is they give us these detuned engines with CVTs to give us better fuel economy. Here we're rated at 27 city, 33 highway, and 30 combined. My actual real MPG this week was 25 and roughly about 27, 28 combined, not quite anywhere close to that 30. In fairness, the air conditioner's on, it's freaking hot summertime here in Phoenix, so I think that might be a lot of what's at work. That said, I don't see massive gains in fuel economy to go along with what I'm giving up in terms of drivability with the CVT. So, not really excited about this powertrain. In the area of ride and handling, the first thing I need to point out is that this Kia Soul is on an all-new platform chassis architecture. It shares the same underpinnings for the most part with the all-new Kia Forte, a sedan which was new last year. So one of the reasons why it's a little bit longer and some of the hardware and the powertrain are different. My first blush is that it has a solid ride, cornering. It's pretty firm for a base level vehicle. I think compared to last year's Kia Soul, it's not quite as refined and it's lost a little bit of finesse, particularly when you over bumps, speed humps in your neighborhood and that wheel drops down. Sometimes you get some harshness there that wasn't there in the last generation. I guess what I'm saying is the level of isolation from things that give you harshness a little bit lower here. So this is a vehicle that when you get over the rough stuff can be a little bit more alarming than before. You're not quite as rubberized and cushioned from some of that stuff, but that does give you a bit of a sharper feel when you're going down the road, a little sportier feel. It does feel larger. It's longer, so that adds to the stability of how it feels going down the road and its speed. Quiet ride, as you can tell. Very little wind noise, so they've made improvements in some areas, but I think they've given up some content in its refinement in others. And that more than likely goes to the fact that this is 300 pounds lighter than the last generation. And so sometimes when they lighten these cars, they lose a little bit of that quality feel that you once used to have with them. So there you go. And I do feel like a little bit less of a hamster in this particular one. All right, well, there you have it for my brief test drive in the all-new 2020 Kia Soul. Now let's look at my 3 key takeaways. First one is, it done growed up. It grew up. This is a car that is definitely maturing before our eyes. It's like that baby, you know, that's cute and pugnacious, and as they grow up, they sort of lose a lot of their puppy and they become more mature, a little bit more sophisticated in their overall look and feel. Well, I think that's what's going on here. It's sleeker, it's a little bit more, it's smarter perhaps, it's not quite as simple. Anyway, it's a vehicle that has matured in its overall style and feel, and that's evident both inside and out. You can still style this thing up in a lot of the different trim grades with other colors. This is most really the bland version you could find, gray, dark, but you can get some pretty bright colors here and bring back some of the funk. But what I will tell you is that I don't think they've gone so far as to lose the funky vibe that the Kia Soul's been known for. And a good example of that is the Scion XB. First generation funky, second generation schlubby. I mean, they just ruined that car. And of course, it's now not on the market anymore. So there you go. I think Kia was very careful here because it's an iconic shape, an iconic car now. And I think they can still get away with marketing it with hamsters. Second key takeaway, I think we're a little bit decontented here. Now, I'm talking about the overall vehicle. Now, it is quite a bit lighter, and so I don't mean decontented that way. It doesn't feel like a cheaper car, but when it comes to handling and performance, it kind of does. And I'm talking about handling. We talked about that a little bit. When you go over bumps, undulations, this new platform just doesn't have the same finesse and the same refinement that it used to. It gives you negative feedback if you push it too hard. The engine, yes, while it's more power than the standard engine is before, being the mid-grade engine across the board, it's got less horsepower, wasn't really that impressed with the fuel economy and the CVT. I don't like CVT transmissions. CVTs, don't like them. And even though Kia really wants us to believe their CVT is a better one, IVT, it's still a CVT. If you like the driving experience of a traditional shifting transmission, you're just not going to get that here unless you play around with it manually, and it just isn't the same thing. So Kia Soul's never really been a driver's car, so it's not like a big step down. Most of the buyers of this vehicle aren't going to care, if I'm honest. But if you are a driver, you're probably going to want to step up into the turbo that comes with a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. There, you'll get that driving experience. Last thing, value. It's still a great value. In spite of whatever I could have said that wasn't positive, there's a lot of positive things going on here. It offers a personality that you're not going to get anywhere else. It offers a lot of stylization options, colors, two-tone, different trim grades, more trim grades. It offers a lot for the money, and even though some of the packaging isn't quite what I expected compared to the previous generation, you can find a Kia Soul that works for you somewhere in their lineup. And when it comes to all the different features you can pack into that for the money, I think there's a winner here. So it keeps on keeping on. That's really the overall thing here. It's grown up and it's just sort of taken on some different things, but still a great option in this particular space. So there you go. If you like what you just saw, I invite you to see our latest video right there, or better yet, subscribe to my YouTube channel down there. How I pay the bills. Either way, stay tuned.